Should be good. Let me see here. Hold this up. Live. Cool. Right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome. It's good to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. And whether you're watching on Banner and Backbone, whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, or however you're finding us today, thank you so much for joining me for another report. We're going to go over some geopolitics for you. We're back. It is Monday, so we are going to rotate back in our geopolitical spotlight fashion, and we're going to take a look at Africa today. So, this is the new format, the way we're doing this. I have found it to be a lot better in terms of providing you guys the coverage, as well as giving you guys more of a regional scope and understanding. So I think this will be another week. And to be honest, I think geopolitics is it's been pretty crazy recently. I don't necessarily see things going one way or the other in a lot of ways, which is something that is a little different. And, traditionally I have experienced, so I've been talking a lot about momentum and particularly entropy, right? Change, the inevitability of change. So speaking of change, you can change how this video performs in the algorithm by hitting the heart button. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the heart. You do me even one more bigger solid than that, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. But everything is crazy in Africa. That has not changed. And unfortunately, we are going to be talking about a place in the world that is really getting just about the worst of all of it. But that's so why talking about Africa is so important. Understanding Africa in particular, and even more so than that, beyond understanding Africa in that literal sense of what's going on there, but also in the larger context of extraction, exploitation, and just overall abuse of humankind by the West. So it's one of the reasons I think it's really important to talk about Africa, and I make an effort to do so here, despite the fact that there's probably a dozen more things going on the continent that I just can't cover. That doesn't really change the fact that I give it my all, for sure. So guys, if you're just now getting here, whatever the case may be, welcome to the Firebrand Report. And we're going to get right into the news. We'll go through everything as quickly and concisely as I can for you guys. Time is valuable, and a lot of people, lots to do. So we'll try and get through this, the quality, and in terms of what we're going to cover today. You'll get my analysis, and all this will go out on a newsletter attached to the live recording. So if you're watching the recording, I'm going to remind you again, if you're watching the live, hit that heart button, hit it, and leave a comment or subscribe. Do all of those things. And with all of that said, my friends, we got a lot to cover today, so we're going to get right into the news. So my friends, it is February 23rd, 2026. I am reporting to you from the fascist states of America, and the world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Firebrand Report, everybody. African Spotlight. To be honest, today's Africa Spotlight is about one thing, right? It's whether or not the continent becomes the operating system for the resource war that we're going that for 2026. Who is going to get exploited, and how, and will Africa be the battleground for resource exploitation in this next age of geopolitical organization? That really is the question. And to be honest, from my perspective, I think the answer is yes, certainly. But we're looking at this situation in Sudan, across the wider Sahel region, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and you've got all of these proxy networks, terrorist groups, and I mean they're multiplying. I mean they're more and more. There's offspring branches of the originals. The Boko Harams, the RSF, the ISIS, right? These groups are multiplying faster and faster. They're getting better and better funded. So, my job here is to show you and tell you everything that's going on. You guys, and your job is to decide what you're going to do with it. So I'll keep up my end of the bargain here, and we're going to go ahead and check in on Sudan. Over the past week, Sudan's war has seriously intensified in the north and south Kordofan regions. You're seeing drone strikes frequently by both the SAF and the RSF in attempts to essentially kill. They say it's to kill the other militants. I think it's kind of just a terror campaign. Both sides have been accused of just trying to terrorize groups that support the other. So the SAF on the 15th, they had a drone strike in Al Safia, which is a market in the Sudari locality in North Kordofan, where they killed at least 28 people and wounded dozens more. Okay, on the 17th of February, the RSF drone attack struck a humanitarian convoy near Abu Jubaya in South Kordofan, killing 3 aid workers and injuring 4 others. The UN Human Rights Chief, he has said, Turk is his name, has said that at least 57 civilians were killed in drone strike attacks in Kordofan over the last 2 days. He called it incredibly disturbing, indiscriminate strikes on markets and populated areas. The international NGOs and MSF statements from across the board this week are describing these strikes on civilian areas and medical facilities, warning that people are too terrified to even leave their home to seek treatment. Over the last month, right? And we've been talking a little bit, but the situation in Sudan has shifted on the ground. I mean, that's not even considering the fact that South Sudan has now entered a state of war. And there is direct alignment with each side in that war, in the greater Sudan war, right? The RSF is operating in conjunction with the sitting president and his group in Sudan, allowing them to move through South Sudan and strike in other places. And we have Lisa here with us today. A great show with Lisa last night. If you didn't go ahead and get to go watch that, it's on both of our pages, I believe. So the big news, though, I would say in terms of right now, is that there's a major offensive by the SAF right now. We've talked about their breakthrough in Dilling a couple weeks ago. They took it, broke a siege, but again, breaking the siege doesn't mean the situation improves for the people in Dilling, for example. I mean, even after the city was quote unquote, liberated by the SAF, the drones, there are multiple drone strikes on humanity, killed dozens of people, and there's still a condition of famine and a struggle to get just basic humanitarian resources into the region. It's systemic, and it's evidenced by the RSF hitting a humanitarian convoy. This just the violence itself. There's an active. These groups aren't just trying to kill each other; they're trying to kill as many people as possible, particularly the RSF. But the SAF, like we've said, even the UN, they're all committing war crimes. They're all killing indiscriminately. So, In South Kordofan, the SAF have had a partial breakthrough, and they have reopened a couple roads, and this has given them an opportunity to open up some new fronts across Sudan. Particularly, they want to try and take the pressure off of El Obeid, which is one of the major corridors that is held by the RSF right now. The RSF is the Rapid Support Forces. They are a paramilitary group that is backed and funded by the UAE in full. They are responsible for horrific war crimes, including the genocide of tens of thousands in the city of Al Fasher back in October of 2025. They have been pretty much regional instigators, and they operate on behalf of the UAE, United Arab Emirates. The SAF are the government-backed forces, the Sudanese armed forces, and they are backed by Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and kind of Pakistan, but Pakistan's a little busy right now. But in general, the proxy war in Sudan is between the UAE and the Saudi bloc, as they're trying to see who really gets to control the region. That's a big thing about the UAE, is that they're just like Iran in the sense that they have tons of proxies. They've got a proxy in Ethiopia. Basically, they helped get the I think is Abu Dhabi, or the prime minister of Ethiopia, right? They're allowing them to train RSF troops in Ethiopia, which is going to allow them to open up a new front, right, in the Blue Nile state, which is something I think could be a reason they're trying to kind of button things up here in Kordofan, because you do have a camp capable of training over 10,000 RSF fighters with professional training. And that's like something that they don't really know. There's already been fighting, and that's part of the whole South Sudan thing, is it allows them to open up a new front. So there's a lot of concern here, at least from my position, from an analytical perspective, looking at the overall conflict, where you could have the situation deteriorate, because the Sudanese armed forces, they are not some like elite military. A lot of these countries are super poor. They don't even pay their soldiers as well. Half the time, these guys will stop and set up their own checkpoint and rob and kill people, because it makes them more money doing that than actually, working as a soldier. It's usually more profitable to be an insurgent. It's a huge problem in Africa. It's driven, of course, in a nutshell, by poverty and extraction and all these things. But it is very much something that, when you look at these dynamics, like we are going to see in Sudan, like we're going to see in these other countries, war is just, for a lot of these people, a better alternative to life and extortion. And it tells us a lot about, humanity, the state of humanity. This is really what I call kinetic mercantilism in real time. Both sides are also using drones. I think this is something we're seeing in Africa. It's a really big deal. It's that asymmetric insurgencies work really well when paired with Ukrainian-style drone warfare. If just in the same manner that Ukraine was able to blow up a Russian tank using a $200 drone, because they are able to exploit, the autoloader mechanism in these tanks, right? The same thing can be true in Africa, except these countries are not Russia. They have even less money to replace equipment. Their tanks are even older. It's very easy to use these drones in the capacity they're being used, and it entirely undermines the balance of power between these countries, and particularly these government forces that are supposed to have the edge because they're better equipped. but drones are just going to prove, and we'll see this when the United States attacks Iran as well. Drones are going to prove that the old doctrine for warfare, um, the idea of quality over quantity, is rapidly going to fall off here, because it's too easy to saturate an airspace, or to overrun a missile battery, or to send 20 FPVs, and only if one gets through, it's fine. It cost you what, like $5,000 or whatever they cost, right? This is the perfect weapon for insurgencies, and it's kind of um, the cause and effect of the development of drone warfare. We're seeing this in Sudan. We're seeing this everywhere. Uh, you know, the Horn of Africa is really important. We've been keeping an eye on the Horn of Africa, particularly the territory of Somaliland, right? So the regional debate, the regional hostilities regarding Israel's recognition of Somaliland and the Berbera port. And part of this deal was a couple things, but to recognize Somaliland, it gives them military access to ports and to build bases. But of course, the background context as well as internal individuals in the know. They also leaked that there was discussions about Somaliland taking displaced Palestinians. So, we're seeing in that sense as well a lot of manipulation, and so Berbera, right? This city, where is Berbera? Where is Somaliland? It's right on the Red Sea. Okay, most of the fighting in the region is not actually between the forces that appear that way. The battle is between the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Turkey, and Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. On the other side, this is my analysis here. You have Israel, the United Arab Emirates, maybe America, maybe, but definitely the UAE and Israel. And so, as well, you just had Ethiopia, which is at the beck and call of the UAE, sign a big deal as well with Somaliland. So this is one of those situations where they're interacting with this pariah state, this breakaway state that Somalia refuses to acknowledge. I mean, this has caused massive tensions between Somaliland and Israel and Somalia, because of course they still claim Somaliland as territory. So whether they can take it back, that's another issue. They can't. So the port of Berbera in particular, it's situated near some of the most trafficked maritime routes. The recognition of this, it gives Israel a foothold over a critical trade artery for the wider world. This battle between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, it's happening in Yemen, right? That's where the STC is. Sudan, also bordering, right, a lot of the Red Sea. It's one of those things where the more clear objective, beyond whatever kind of else we're seeing in that regard, has to be that this region, they're fighting over territory. Particularly now you have the Ethiopia and Eritrea situation, which we'll go ahead and I'll update you on as well. Even though it's not actually in today's newsletter in a ton of context, but I do want you to kind of get that situation. And like the most recent update would be, Mogadishu, where they actually, they've created a port deal with the Somaliland as well. So this is all kind of going in line with that nexus being that of Israel and the UAE. And I allege Israel's involved because Israel has been allowing the UAE to use their air bases to fly flights, to either fly things to Ethiopia or to Chad, wherever, to supply the RSF. So this is all verifiable. So uh, it seems to me that Israel is short on friends, and so is the UAE. So whether it's a relationship of convenience or whether both of them have similar goals in overall destabilizing the wider region, whether that's the Sahel and the Horn of Africa around the Red Sea, to see if they can consolidate power through their proxies, that would be the interpretation that I'm seeing. My greatest concern, of course, is that Somaliland functions as um, effectively a means for Israel to export the Palestinians and mass genocide them in a very meaningful and effective way. And I do think that's one of the underlying discussions with Somaliland, and it sits very heavy and is a point of larger concern for me as well. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But there's just a lot of there's just a bunch of tension in the region, and this goes to the Middle East as well. I mean, the Horn of Africa and the Middle East are kind of intrinsically linked. What happens in the Horn of Africa affects Iran. What's going on in Iran is a big deal, and you're seeing that the conflict in Sudan impacts the conflict in Iran. It impacts the ability of these other regional leaders to stabilize a rapidly destabilizing region of the world. And the United States, of course, is getting ready to come in and really just kind of bloody someone's nose, potentially really bloody their own, and just leave a lot of things broken in a region that's really struggling to hold itself together at all. One of these really important conflicts in Africa, and I also treat, I think, this particular conflict as a bellwether, and that's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or the DRC. In regards to the long-standing, at this point, internal conflict with the insurgent group that is known as M23, which is a direct proxy of Rwanda. It has been proven, cited by the United Nations, that not only does Rwanda oftentimes provide military leadership, personnel, weapons, M23 is by all means a proxy force for Rwanda. And so the situation in Rwanda, or in the DRC, is quite tense. You actually had the United States in a very, what reads to me as kind of a desperate move at this point. The Congolese government, right? They went ahead and said, we want to hand over this mine. We want to hand over this mine in that produces 15% of the world's tantalum. We just want to give it to the United States, right? But the thing is, they don't actually control that mine. The mine that is currently controlled by M23. It has been controlled by M23 since 2024. They make about $800,000 a week on that mine. I think it's insane. So these guys are better funded. I mean, they just making money hand over fist because the world will buy, right? That's the whole problem with this insatiable demand from Western tech and military expansionism, is that they'll just buy. They don't care who. They just have their own their own interests, and that supersedes buying from and funding terrorism. So, and these proxy groups are a means to an end. Again, Rwanda really wants access over these minerals, and they can't directly go to war, so they just create a separatist group that can. And M23 has regional governors. They have, their own basic, not good, but they provide basic government services. This is effectively its own micronation, and they're constantly kind of at war. And the FARDC, which is the government forces aligned with the DRC's government, also accused of genociding the very same ethnic groups that the M23 tends to pull from. So, you can imagine that if you join a separatist group, or the region you're in, there's a separatist group, and then the guys they send to free you are the same people who perpetrated a genocide against you, at least your ancestors. It's kind of a turnoff, right? You're probably going to want to fight for the other guy, and that's really the dynamic. So, from February 18th to 19th, we're seeing the Critical Threats Project kind of give us an update on the front lines here. And so in the Eastern DRC, last week confirmed that the conflict is entering a more dangerous phase, right? We're escalating. M23 is pressing around Goma and strategic routes in North Kivu, while Kinshasa accuses Rwanda of deepening direct involvement. I'm sure that this is probably true, right? So 18th and the 19th, there was severe fighting in South and North Kivu. And I'll grab you just so you guys can understand. They've got a bunch of good maps, and so I will share my screen because it'll help you guys kind of understand, I think, a little bit more what I'm talking about when I am talking about this stuff. So I'll show you guys a quick map here. And so what you have here is going to be on my screen. I got to move this here. Oh, I had stuff open on here. So give me 1 second. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. All right, fantastic. And I'm going to replace my face with this. So check this out, friends. So what you see here is this is just the Kivu region. Okay, so Goma, of course, but here's where, I just want to really point out a couple things. So here's Rwanda on the other side of Lake Kivu. This whole area is M23, right? So M23 holds this region, which and so here's the crazy thing, guys. Like, look, I just want to point out to you, it's a big place, right? So it's like, oh, the DRC is a big place. They only have a little bit. Look at what they control, not where, but what. Each of these are roads. These are critical trade routes. This city of Goma, this all around Lake Kivu, this is a trade artery, a trade hub for Africa. This is one of those places where things move. And if they move, it's through this region. Like, this is not just, oh, they lost some land. Like, they're losing, the DRC is losing a significant amount of its, GDP, right? That's its exports. These countries, their primary export, primarily, right, is usually these minerals. So they have to pay a military, right? The DRC, they have to pay a military. They have to have other people be interested. So they're so desperate at this point, they're willing to give up a mine that provides 15% of the global supply of coltan, which is refined into something called tantalum, which is one of the most valuable resources in all electronics, right? They have a 15% stake. They're willing to give that away to the United States to try and incentivize the United States to militarily intervene so they can control that resource. They wouldn't be doing that unless they didn't think that they could do it. You have pro-government and Wazalendo fighters who are aligned with the FARDC. They're reportedly, they killed or captured some new M23 recruits nearing a training facility, which, basically they were able to come out and say that, these people, this was on the 18th and 19th, they're able to come out and confirm that, hey, we are seeing these people be trained in the around, the region, right? So, we know that Rwanda is training them and arming them. And so there was a ceasefire. I'm so tired of the word ceasefire. It doesn't even mean anything. Like, Gaza's in a ceasefire. Lebanon has a ceasefire. Thailand and Cambodia have a ceasefire. That everywhere is a ceasefire, and yet they're still killing each other, right? It's such a meaningless word at this point. It's almost just like an excuse for, they say, okay, well, there's a ceasefire. So even if they're not actually ceasing fire, as long as they say there's a ceasefire, the wider world can look away and say, okay, great. So by the 19th, the February 18th ceasefire was already violated. And you've got M23 essentially claiming that the Congolese forces are using ground and airstrikes on its positions in where there is civilians. So like these are the same guys who straight up genocided these people before, and now M23 is there, and now they're indiscriminately bombing and killing civilians. The refugee flows, particularly, are being overwhelmed as camps are people are fleeing into these camps from the North Kivu region, where you're seeing all this conflict, right? So as all these people here are, running away, but it's also, I'll point this out really quickly, just because so government forces are fighting here with M23 down here towards the South Kivu region, but this is one part that I'm kind of watching, because it's right here, but it's like this slow creep, and they're creeping up this road, and while they're attacking down here and around there, like they're still M23 is taking ground every day. Every day they take ground, and the government forces are not effectively dislodging them in any capacity that I have yet to see. And momentum in any conflict like this is key. Who is attacking, right? Generally speaking, you want to decide in a conflict where you're not like dug in. You want to be, the aggressor, as long as there's not like a clearly stated place you're defending, right? If you're just trying to be flexible, which is what these insurgencies are so good at, is being flexible, because they're fighting an asymmetric war. They don't necessarily have to hold the ground they take. They can leave, and they can always come back, because they're not responsible. There's no obligation to them to protect that ground. It just the level of flexibility. Whereas like if they take something back and they're a government force, they have to stay there. Retreating is like giving up your government, your city to insurgents. So you see, they just are able to be more flexible, and despite that, I genuinely think they might be better equipped, and better funded at this point in time. I mean, the DRC hasn't been seeing revenues from these mines since 2024, mid 2025. They're going to lose money. And the fact that they've brought in a private United States PMC company into the DRC to help them form something called tax brigades. Yes, so private military contractors from the United States, Vectis Global, formerly Blackwater guys, they are now in the DRC forming tax brigades. So their job is to go and basically, I suppose, make sure that all those rare earth minerals are protected, and to protect these sites. So is it enough? I don't think a private military company, and that's what they're going to get from the United States. The United States is busy in Iran. And whatever happens in Iran after the U.S. is done with Iran, they will not be able to, they're not going to be able to change or really do something else elsewhere. Like whatever they do in Iran, it's going to end. It's going to close a lot of doors in terms of military intervention in the future, regardless of unless they just choose not to. But I think that's unlikely. So in the DRC, you're seeing doesn't really look like they're going to take these resources back, which means that there's going to be more stress on the global supply chain. There's more and more stress on the acquisition of ethically sourced minerals, right? The idea that there's some global standard where you don't buy resources that are, produced with slave labor or extraction or, violence. Right? But, we know how that is just a bunch of crap. Obviously, they do that anyway, because look at these people. I mean, they're making money hand over fist. Rwanda does clean a lot of these minerals, so they'll mix it in with their exports, and then that's how they smuggle a lot of these things out of the country. But uh, you know, Rwanda, this is a mineral war. Like, just to be clear, these are resource wars. Sudan is also a resource war, but I also think it's an opportunity for the UAE to capture a country, a whole country, and use that country that borders Egypt and is around those other rivals, Saudi Arabia and they want to destabilize that region. That's really powerful. But in the DRC, it's a little different. It really is all about minerals. Rwanda wanted the DRC's resources. They've got a history with the Rwandan genocide. They hate each other, and so they just did it. And I don't see M23 being removed. This is going to affect the logistics for global chip supplies, electric vehicles, solar, anything and everything that's electronic. 15% of the global supply of just one type of thing, right, is coming from a single mine in the DRC. The United States absolutely has tons of interests. They are trying to set up special economic zones throughout. They want to set up a special corridor where the United States effectively gets to buy or control these regions like autonomously, kind of like taking sovereignty away from these countries and allowing them to directly control actually foreign resources in other countries, right? That is the idea. That's the goal. Of course, what Africa is teaching us is that this is not enforceable, that a Western power cannot directly come in and engage in this kind of behavior without actually backing it up on the ground with troops. Because if they don't, someone will come and take it with guns, and then they have to take it back. So, in this trend, it carries across the continent, like the Niger and the Sahel region, right? In the Sahel, which is a belt of these African countries across kind of North Africa, the Islamic State Sahel province, the ISSPP, they push toward Niamey. And the January 30 attack, we talked about this. They actually were able to seize the country's primary airport of Niger, right? So the country of Niger recently had a coup where the military ousted. When I say recently, it's been, I want to say, like a year or two. They ousted the current Western forces that were there, France and the United States. They brought in Wagner Group. And they proceeded to have been getting their asses kicked by the Islamic State. They're really good at blowing up their own people with drone strikes, the military junta, but they're not very good at dealing with ISIS. So, could be a problem for them. Like I reported on this a while ago, right? And I just wanted to bring it back up again. It's just a great example of this region. It's like, the Islamic State and what they accomplished, right, at Diori Hamani International Airport, where they were actually only, a stone throws away from 1,000 tons of unenriched uranium, yellow cake uranium. They almost walked away with it. They could have. It just goes to show that these security situations in these countries, they're not working at all. And the Islamic State in Niger, not Nigeria, but in Niger, is potentially going to unseat this military junta. It's not clear whether or not it will be able to, the government forces will be able to unseat or stop ISIS. And this remains true all over Africa. So Nigeria is experiencing it's horrific what's happening in Nigeria. I mean, Boko Haram, but this is this continues to spread. I mean, around Africa, right? It's like not even contained. Like it's just everywhere across the continent. You're seeing these groups. So like we've seen some of the most deadly attacks in Nigeria in a long time in recent weeks. We're talking about gangs of gangs on motorcycles, right? They're coming in groups of 20, 30, 50, right? Almost like, raiders, and they come in on motorcycles. They'll kill, indiscriminately, behead people, and then drive off. And by the time the government gets there, you know, on February 14th, this has been confirmed now. I mean, we were trying to figure out the numbers, but gunmen on motorcycles attacked 3 villages in Niger states, Nigeria, Borgu region. 30 to 46 people were killed, and they abducted people as well. You saw in early February massacres of scores of civilians in Nuku and Woro, which were towns in Kwara state as well. It's not just one state; it's multiple states across the region. It was likely, actually, residents described more than 200 attackers operating for hours, beheading victims, torching shops, despite the proximity to a Nigerian Air Force base. Right. So, just a quote from one of my sources from Al Jazeera here, just to kind of give you, a little bit of an idea too. Likely, Boko Haram's militants massacred at least 170 civilians in one of the deadliest attacks in Nigeria in recent years, tying the hands and feet of several of their victims. I'm going to stop there. It's in the newsletter if you want to read it. Horrific. But this trend, right, of these mobile bandits, it, like doesn't, if they can't stop them, they can't stop them. And Africa is so destabilized that this is like, what is the Nigerian government supposed to do? What is the expectation here? Like, are they supposed to, like, what are they trying to get away with here? I just, I don't think that these countries are going to be able to really get rid of these insurgents. I just have more and more doubt every day. And it doesn't seem like anyone is getting any closer to really dealing with these groups. The only potential shift could be the RSF in Sudan. But you also have Ethiopia and Eritrea, not really talked about because nothing has happened per se. They're in the exact recently. I mean, there's been some tests. It's all, but that you could see a full-blown war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Ethiopia basically claiming that they deserve access to the Red Sea and they want to claim a port, which is very in line with the UAE's goals as well. But even beyond that, right, beyond the conflict, we also have to talk about the places that are doing other things, like South Africa's pivot is pretty significant. We saw South Africa has spent the last 2 weeks moving away from the United States and pivoting harder to China. And it just signed terms to basically the trade minister, Parks Tao, traveled to China to finalize an agreement allowing South African goods into the Chinese market duty-free. Right? The partnership is reported to grant zero tariff access on almost all South African tariff lines. South African experts say the duty-free access across 100% of tariff lines could materially reshape export patterns. And this has been welcomed by all of South African experts. South Africa has been treated exceptionally poorly by Trump and his regime. They refused to even let them into, the G20 summit of the largest 20 economies in the world. They were recently the chair, and then the United States basically told them to F off, and they didn't want to sign a climate commitment. which is like probably the single most important issue that any human is facing anywhere on the planet, undeniably. Um, like the science that the planet is in a state of terminal decline is irrefutable. And just because wealthy billionaires don't want to acknowledge that their oil and gas is going to drive humanity to the brink of extinction doesn't make it any less true. So, of course, South Africa saying, well, we got to make some climate commitments. Well, in this case, they have been basically uninvited by America, which is now the chair of the G20 again. Unfortunately, they're no longer welcome. So they've pivoted entirely to China. It's just another example in the wider scheme of the global shift away from the United States to China. It's 100% verifiable. Totally verifiable. Just absolutely. The data's there. And the same, remains true in Africa. On one side of the continent, right, you have war. It's just everywhere, right? And it's like the bigger concern too is that these kind of conflicts, they just spill over borders. There's not really a comfortable way for these countries to contain them. So, it's these kind of things where we need to be most observant. Places like Chad, that is neighboring Sudan, or, countries that are close to other hotspots in the region. Like the Tigray conflict very easily becomes an Ethiopia and Eritrea conflict. And these fights, you can only have so much war in a region before it stops being able to like even effectively export. So that's one of the bigger concerns like you have too, is if you have too much conflict, right? Like we don't really know, like the actual flow of resources out of these places, it's really hard to say, right? Because maybe a shipment will go through and then another one gets seized by militants. Or, for example, in the DRC, there was a massive landslide at that one mine that happens to make 15% of the world's coltan. Massive landslide. Over 200 were killed. I watched a phenomenal story, though, I will say, about a group of 20 some odd people who dug out one man who survived with their hands. No help comes when things like this happen in Africa. I mean, the community of people, they started digging with their hands and they pulled this man out of the mine. And he's beyond lucky to be alive because he watched everyone around him suffocate. But this is like any humanitarian aid, like measles, massive outbreaks of measles, like any kind of disease you can imagine. That's the part that really is just most tragic of anything, is that humanitarian workers, aid workers, they can't even get into these regions. And if they do, if they try and bring in medical equipment, it either gets blown up or the insurgents raid it and they take it and they have medical equipment. But it's when you say it's like, oh, well, these people are terrorists, right? Like the RSF, they are a terrorist organization. Like they genocide people, they starve people, they do all these things. We call them a terrorist organization, but they just act exactly like the Israeli Defense Forces. They act like the United States. The United States is starving the people of Cuba. They are starving the people of Cuba. They're starving them of the ability to have energy or food. Israel is doing the same thing in Palestine, Lebanon. This is a pattern, right? This is the pattern of systemic violence, abuse, and genocide. And we see that in abundance in Africa. And that's what we're seeing in the region. I anticipate things getting more chaotic in the coming weeks. I think there's a very high likelihood of conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. I think that whatever the United States does in Iran is going to rapidly just it's all going to fall apart. I just it's all so precarious. So there's a lot coming up, and this affects you. This affects me. This affects you wherever you are. Of course, this is a geopolitics show. So, we have people watching from every country around the world. It's gonna shoot up the supply chain because we're talking about the raw inputs to a technological society. We're talking about a large percentage of that becoming unavailable. At the same time that the demand for these things has never been higher. So it's almost like the incentive to come in as a foreign country and like manipulate and try and control to get you what you want, which is to further your extraction model. Like that they keep doing this and it just makes it worse every time. And it's going to stop working. I mean, the other thing you have to consider is the climate angle. You have to consider the famine, the drought, the just reality of the fact that the world and those regions, particularly the Sahel, is rapidly becoming uninhabitable. The Middle East is going to become uninhabitable. We're going to see mass desertification of the region. It's going to be a disaster, right? So you're going to see water wars in 2026. So you've got wars for raw minerals and rare earths. You've got wars over water. You've got wars over, the things that they were fighting about in the first place. And the conditions of 2026 really only create a bleaker picture for Africa, particularly that of Sudan, which is going to serve as the proxy battlefield for this fight between the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, in this conflict. And we'll see what happens. But, I don't think I'm going to be coming to you guys next week with any super great news. And it saddens me to say that, but I would rather just set expectations and be pleasantly surprised if the opposite is true. But when we do analysis, we care about what the outcome is based on the data. So the data says not great for the people living there right now, or just regional stability as a whole. So guys, if you thought this report was helpful, if you thought this report was informative, if you thought this report left you with a better knowledge of what's going on in Africa and gave you a little bit of direction to maybe interpret the news or see different things around in your life, then hit the heart button. Not only that, hit the subscribe button. Beyond that, if you're watching this as a live recording, restack this. If you're watching on a different platform, whether that is YouTube or Banner and Backbone or any of these things, make sure you subscribe as well and join the Firebrand Project as a community. So the video, this recording, you'll see beneath me. If you're watching the video recording, the newsletter is going to be right down there. You can check it out. If you're watching the recording, keep an eye out for the notification when I publish this recording. And please go ahead, like, comment, and restack. If you're here, you can help network later by engaging with this content when it hits your email inbox. So I'm going to ask you to do that as well, because like I said in the beginning, my job is to provide you with the information. What you choose to do with that is up to you. And I hope you choose to spread that around with more folks. Support me any way you can. You can go to Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in my profile description. You can make a donation there. Paid subscribers, $6 a month. It's a great way to help me support my work, keep going. And I'll put you on the wall of fire. And I'm also working on, different, we do paid subscriber live streams. I could do a little bit better with the consistency there, and I do apologize, but I'm also working on some other incentives for you guys, like a weekly written analysis as well, something that is only available to, if you want to be paid, you can get that weekly analysis as a paid subscriber, because I don't feel that I'm paywalling that information from you, because I provide all of that to you here. But if you wanted to look at that a little bit more in depth, that's something we'll try and do for paid in the future as well. Follow us on Blue Sky. I made a Blue Sky. Go follow me on Blue Sky. I'm going to be putting a link tree in there, but the Blue Sky is go follow me on Blue Sky. Go find me on TikTok. The Firebrand Project just went on TikTok. Go on TikTok. Follow us there as well. YouTube. There's a Firebrand Project YouTube. Go and subscribe to it. So help us kind of break out into all these different places, and we got to keep kind of focused on what we're doing. We want to bring integrity. We want to bring facts. We want to bring receipts, and then we want to bring the information to you guys to make educated decisions based on the full picture. And I am grateful that you guys give me the opportunity to do that every day. So if you are watching on one of these other platforms, you can see there's a little QR code right here next to me on the screen. You go ahead and scan that. It'll take you over there as well. Or wherever you're watching from, you just search the Firebrand Project into your browser and you'll find us where you need to be. So thank you all so very much for joining me today, my friends. I'll go ahead and actually, we have about 5 minutes. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask me, I don't have all the answers, but if you have any particular questions you wanted to ask me, get my thoughts on, I can do that for you guys for a couple minutes. And the Blue Sky handle should just be the Firebrand Project on the Blue Sky. So if not, I'll make sure I have all the links and stuff in this newsletter, because I'm building out the new link tree and everything there as well. You're not going to see content there, but if you guys have any questions, I'll sit around here for another minute or so, 2 minutes. If there's no questions, I'll just kind of let you guys go. But if you are watching the recording now, don't feel bad if you want to click off and just, scroll down through the newsletter, or, type a question in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, resubscribe, and hit the like button. So guys, hit that heart button. But yeah, I'll give it another minute or so. If there's anyone who wants to ask a question in the chat about anything that's going on, be happy to give you guys my 2 cents. But, other than that, that's what I got for you guys today. So we'll just see if there's anything anyone wants to chat about, but it's been a busy week. We'll see what's going on. We'll see. I don't know. I will say there's a lot of people like, what's going to happen with Iran? I don't know. I don't know when they're going to do it, because I don't know what their level of confidence. Someone just asked, did I speak on Iran? I don't know what their level of confidence is. I know that mathematically speaking, it's the stupidest operation in the history of the United States. The mathematics alone, Iran has more missiles than we have interceptors total, right? So when I say interceptors, like air defense, they have to launch another missile to intercept that missile. Those interceptors cost, millions of dollars. So, I think and take what I say with a grain of salt, but the math says they don't even have enough interceptors to stop all the missiles. No amount of how many planes can you really put in the sky at once? Just because you have 140 aircraft doesn't necessarily mean that you can fly them all at once. I just don't think that this regime, that this America has the know-how, has the military leadership, has the intelligence on a fundamental basic level to look at this and think that they are going to win. And Xi Jinping is over there he's just stoked. He's like, yeah, use up all your interceptors. Use up all your interceptors. Use them, and then I'm going to take Taiwan because you can't stop any of my missiles. That's what I think. That's what I think is going on around. I also think that it's going to, and already is, damaging relationships between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, as well as Egypt. And I think that'll have big consequences as well, actually, in a very real way as well, because uh, the United States actions, especially considering what they're already dealing with in Africa in terms of their own backyard, for the United States to come in and just steamroll Iran, uh, and not with enough power to destroy Iran or necessarily comfortably remove the regime, just enough to destabilize everything and break everything and leave a mess that probably ends in insurgency and civil war. This is not what the people of Iran are asking for when they're asking for freedom. They're not asking for the United States to firebomb their country. They're asking for the end of a tyrannical, murderous regime. And this regime was willing to kill tens of thousands of its own people to stay in control. If you don't think they're willing to watch the entire country burn, then they aren't. I mean, it's all. I think part of them think that they're still going to back down, like they'll back off, like they'll surrender. They won't. Like maybe if we move enough planes, they'll quit. But Iran knows, and they also know that Israel depleted all their interceptors. Like the Pentagon placed an order to replace these particular interceptors. They're the THAAD systems, THAADs. They're for intercepting the really fast, really high missiles. So Lockheed Martin was like, oh yeah, totally, we can do that. But we won't have any replacements until 2027. Oh, well, it's so ridiculous. I really can only look at these people and just kind of scoff. Like, I shouldn't be able to discern here in my office, in my house, that the quote unquote most powerful military in the world, with all of the intelligence, seems to think that they're somehow going to enter and end this favorably. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't think it's supposed to make sense to us. Um, yeah. So, tomorrow we got a whole nother newsletter, and we're going to be doing Europe, North America for the regional spotlight. So make sure you check us out then and come back same time. We'll be here. We're going to be doing another Firebrand Report. And until then, remember, like, comment, subscribe, paid subscription, $6 a month. And of course, I bring you guys the information. You guys take it out into the world with you. You are the firebrands. I light your torch. You carry onwards. Bring this information, this truth, this conversation out with you. Have these conversations with other people around you in your life. And we should be very worried for our soldiers in the United States. Just, the total lack of regard for the lives of those people as well. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, make sure you go check out all our other socials. Make sure you click the little Chiron and come subscribe, check out my other stuff. And until then, you guys remember, burn bright, resist.